Alright, so here we are back in the basement brewery again. It's been several months, probably almost a year since I got it all up and running, put together and everything, and decided I want to try to make some more videos. I did make one video of the maiden voyage of the system, kind of going through the rundown, which you can find that in my uploads. Wanted to do an experiment. I was watching a older podcast from Brad Smith, the creator of Beersmith software. He was doing an interview with Gordon Strong, and they were talking about adjunct grains, and I had read a few things about it before, but I was kind of curious. After watching the podcast, it made a lot of sense about adding the grains in at mash out rather than having them recirculate, especially on our systems where they recirculate over and over and over through the grain bed, possibly extracting some astringency out of it. So the purpose of the video is to conduct an experiment. What I want to do is I want to do 3 batches. I'm going to do brew in a bag, small batches, so I don't have to try to do an experiment on a large scale, 5 gallons or more. I'm going to do like about 3/4 of a gallon, maybe a gallon batches. And what I want to do is I'm going to do the first batch, I'm going to do as just normal, straight brew in a bag with all the adjunct grains in. And then the second one I'll do, I will do it with the adjunct grains added in at the end of the mash or the mash out. And then the third batch I'll do that with cold steeping of the grains, which I don't think that they talked about that in the video with Brad Smith and Gordon. But that's what I want to do. Also, kind of introduction, short-circuited brewers, me and 2 other guys. I've got the First Electric Brewery, the other 2 guys, Kyle and Mike, are working on theirs. And so we hope to be bringing some more videos to you guys, kind of in the same strain as what Tony's doing over there on YouTube. And I think a guy out of New Zealand, Time for Another One. A lot of good stuff you guys are putting out, so we wanted to kind of try to follow in your same vein. You inspired us a little bit, so we want to do that. And so we'll jump right into the brew day of the first 2 batches, and then we'll come back the next day and do the final batch. Don't really have time to do all 3 batches in one day, but we'll break it up between 2 days and knock it out.
Started with my volume of strike water, which was 3.12 gallons, and out of the tap it was 38 degrees. While my strike water was heating up for my mash, I measured out 3 pounds, 4.7 ounces of US Pale 2-row. To that, I added 4 ounces of caramel or Crystal 60 Lava Bond. Also in the mash will be 2.6 ounces of black patent malt, and 1.3 ounces of chocolate malt. Milled my grains for mashing on my 2-roller monster mill. Once my strike water had reached mash-in temperature of 157 degrees, I began by mashing in the grains, pouring the grains in the brew in a bag. All of the grains, adjunct grains, Pale 2-row, all went in the first batch into the pot. And we should achieve a mash temperature of 152 degrees according to my software.
Alright, so as promised, I said that I would try to figure out some kind of way to incorporate the electric brewery into the brew in a bag day. So, as you can see, I have my hot liquor tank at 152 degrees, and when I pull off the lid, haha, there. So I'm going to maintain my mash temperature of the brew in a bag pot in the hot water bath in my hot liquor tank. So I think that should work pretty well. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody do that before, but we're going to give it a shot and see how it works. I can't think that it would be bad. I'll just have to wipe down the pot a little bit whenever I get done mashing and put it back on the stove for a boil. But basically all I've got is coming out of the bottom of the mash tun down to my pump, back up through the recirculation port, and of course it's just recirculating inside. And I was pretty amazed the pot fit like a dream in the coil there. Just use the spoon on either side to hold it up off of the element. So we'll see you in an hour.
Once the mash out was completed, I brought the total volume of wort to boil back on the stove and added my first hop addition at boil of 0.57 ounces of East Kent Goldings. I do want to note that I had a camera malfunction and was not able to display the 15-minute boil addition of 0.2 ounces of East Kent Golding.
Back in the basement brewery again. The boil's over, and so I thought I would try to use the hot liquor tank again for another use, since it's there. Drained all of the hot water out, and now I've got water about in the temperature, let's see, it's about 66 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I'm doing is I'm running cold water. My winter time right now, the cold water is about 40 degrees coming out of my tap. So I've got that running through, circulating through the hot liquor tank, and then I also have a hose hooked up to my faucet, and then that is running through the coil inside to help keep the water cool, and then I'm just draining that down into my floor drain. So hopefully it won't take too long. I don't have a counterflow chiller anymore. I mean, I don't have a immersion chiller anymore, since I don't do anything but the electric with my counterflow, so we'll see how long it takes to get it down to pitching temperature. Alright, so there's my small fermenter transferred out of the kettle into that. I'm just going to do some, probably about 6-pack batches, just for testing purposes. I did wind up with more wort than what I really wanted, but after doing all of the calculations and everything, trying to get a batch smaller than having some wort left over really was too difficult to try to measure out that tiny amount of hops and everything. So I just decided to, I guess, just dump some of the wort, I guess, eventually. So that's where we are right now. That's the first batch with just a regular brew in a bag. Nice dark color, tastes pretty good, and I'm going to pitch the yeast here in just a second. Alright, so we got 5.5 grams of yeast, splitting up some US-05 into all these batches, so probably should employ our funnel again. Probably over pitching by a little bit, but I think it'll be fine. I'll just put the same amount of yeast in each one, and we should be good to go. So on to the next one.
Second batch I mashed in with the pale 2-row only, pretty much what you would expect to see with all pale malt mash. Pretty thin, pretty clear. We're going to add the grains in at the mash end for this batch.
Okay, so I've added my adjunct grains in, and I'm heating it up to mash out temperature. Currently the hot liquor tank is at 170, and I'm just waiting for the mash in here to come up to temp so we can mash out. I don't know if you can see or not. Interesting thing is it's looking more like a brown ale
than a porter right now, so we'll have to see what happens here. It's only been going for a few minutes, so maybe it will get darker, but I don't know. It looks pretty light right now to me. I don't know. Pretty light. So we'll see. Part of the experiment. Alright, so the grain's steeped for 24 hours. We've got a couple colanders here so that I can strain everything out. I thought I'd go with a pretty coarse one first so that it will grab all the grain bits and not clog up the other colander. So here we go. Put this in here first and see how we do. Looks like the grains absorbed quite a bit of liquid. Let's see what we wind up with here in the end. Let's see. Get on there so I don't get it all over the countertop. Well, looks like we came out with about 500 milliliters. And we started out with 1 liter, so it did absorb some in the grain, but color looks pretty good from what I can see. Nice and dark, so we will add that to the boil in the last 15 minutes. Alright, so we're 15 minutes from the end of the boil on the third batch, and we're going to go ahead and add the last hop addition of East Kent Golding, 0.2 ounces. As I pour in the liquid from the cold steeping grains, you can see that it doesn't really want to incorporate into the liquid very well. It does eventually and turns out okay, but it's just a very strange reaction. I'd never seen anything like it before. Almost like adding liquid extract at the end of a boil.
Alright, so the brew day's over, and got the 3 batches knocked out, the 2 yesterday and the 1 today, and came up with some interesting results for that. Cheers, little pale ale I brewed a few weeks ago, dry hopping in the keg right now and carbonating. So some interesting results with the batches that I did. The first batch came out with the highest gravity. Oh, another thing I wanted to add too about the experiment was that I have had my water tested by Ward Labs. Sent a bottle out, got a test back. Generally, I will put some minerals in my water, some sulfates, some lactic acid, some other things to adjust the pH and the sulfates and the hardness of the water. So that's one of the things I want to do with this experiment as well, is test and see if the grains are making that much difference with my water, and do I really need to add those things or not. That was one of the things Gordon was talking about as well. So that's part of the experiment as well. Came up with some interesting results. The first batch that I did was just straight normal batch with the adjunct grains in. Apparently the acidity from those grains did help in adjusting the water on their own. I did get the highest efficiency out of that batch. It was a pre-boil gravity of 1035 and a post-boil gravity of 1052. The second batch, which I did adding the adjunct grains into the mash at the end, that actually wound up being 1033 beginning and a 1047 post-boil. So the third batch was a little bit higher than the second one. I don't know why exactly, but it just wound up being that way. Pre-boil gravity was 1034, post-boil was 1050. So did learn a few things. Bruna bag stuff was interesting to do, and then also the efficiency factor of the grains. So this will probably be all for this video. Probably won't show you the bottling aspect and everything, so the next video will be more than likely the tasting that we'll do over at Buckeye Brewcraft, Jim Downing is going to allow us to do that. So if you like it, obviously like it on our YouTube page and comment. Tell me what I did wrong, ask me questions, whatever. And if you want to see more videos from us, go ahead and subscribe.